we are live. Hello, everybody, as you come on in and join us. I'm, of course, Barbara Tien here with Projectkin for another one of our Stories 250 series. Welcome, Kyla and Jennifer. You know, this community extending across the planet, it never fails to amaze me. Jennifer Jones is, of course, joining from Bendigo in Victoria State in Australia, and up inland from that, where it's very, very hot in the middle of summer. Meanwhile, Kyla is joining us from just outside of Houston. And you, my very special guest today, Diane Burley, tell me, where are you coming in from?
I am coming in from a little bit on the cold East Coast, New Jersey. It's not as cold as it was New Year's Day when I went to see the polar plunge. And I couldn't believe people were diving under the water, and it was -1 Fahrenheit wind chill. I was just brutally cold. Not quite that cold today.
Speaking of very cold, Marcy Keats Rudolph just joined us from Nova Scotia, where whatever we're saying is cold, they're colder.
That is
Unless, of
true.
course, we have Calgary join in, and then who knows? But they talk about Edmonton being cold. So I don't know. It's all cold to me. And we have a polar plunge here where people jump in the San Francisco Bay on, again, New Year's, because why? But apparently they don't know what cold is.
No, no, I was so cold watching these people in bathing suits. I'm all bundled up.
So we are here on a Sunday in January, and it is actually kind of a special Sunday here across these lower states here of the United States, where it's kind of a football thing. So I'm kind of not surprised that we have a strong support and representation from Canada and Australia. And I see you, Kyla. Thank you. But there's a lot of football games going on, so we don't mind the distraction. It's okay. We have hereby acknowledged it. But today, we're talking about something that happened a long, long time ago, and in many ways is very foundational to what we do today. My guest here in Diane Burley of the Musings of a Storyteller. Do you see how I did that? is going to tell us a little bit about her contribution to Stories 250, this first one that's already on the timeline, and another one in more work that she has up ahead. So, Diane, do tell us more.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for this whole idea. Just real brief background to give you an idea of where I was coming from when I embraced this project. I am half Italian and half Irish. At least that's what I thought. And when you said dig into that Revolutionary War time period, I was now on my mother's side of the family, the Irish side. The Italian, I've gone back to Italy and all that. I can take back to the 1580s. It's great. But on my mother's side, my mother's maiden name was Post, and which was an odd Irish name, right? And somebody said, well, maybe it's Pennsylvania Dutch or something. And I think it came through Canada. So there was no real information about it. And in digging in to that time period around the 1776, I find that there is a very strong Dutch family history. And the Ryersons are one of the two families that I'm going to end up talking about. But this is the Ryersons. And they came over at the time when it was New Netherland. That family came over then. They were a Dutch Reformed. They started a church. The Dutch Reform Church, and many of you probably know this, this was news to me, having grown up Catholic, that they did not like a hierarchy. They believed very strongly in the religion, the community, that it was the elder there, the bishop there was the one who set the tone, that your public life was known by everybody. And that really is sort of the backdrop to what I'm gonna talk about. So, my 4th great-grandmother is Jane Ryerson, and she is the offspring, the descendant of these Dutch Reform who've started off in, New Netherland, New York, and what is now New York. They were in Brooklyn, Staten Island, came over to North Jersey, and, I made a joke when I was, writing this up that if all you know about New Jersey is Newark Airport and you see all those refineries, that's nothing like what North Jersey is really like. Once you get away from the airport and all of that industrial, that heavy industrial, it is just breathtakingly beautiful. Tons of rivers and lakes, and there's 3 major rivers that come in. The battles, when they first started off, the Revolutionary War battles, were all in that area of Bergen County, Passaic, right up against the Delaware River, Washington crossing the Delaware. And then the British were on the other side of New York. So I mean, it's all very tight clustered. So you have this young woman. She's in her 20s and into 30s when the Revolutionary War is going on. Um, there was so little about Jane, and it's really important to me to talk about the women. Um, when I was going through the probate, I found her father's will, and he references her as his daughter married to, you know, her husband, and his last name is Tykes, Diedrich Tice. But Diedrich Tice's wife is his daughter, and that's the closest we get to talking about Jane. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do something different here. We're going to put a face together. I knew the plot of land that they were on. Uncles had inns. I mean, this is a wealthy by many people's standards, right? They
Means.
had
Yeah.
land, they farmed, they had a very cordial relationship. Their ancestors, their fathers and uncles had done a lot of trading with the Lenape nation that was there. So, but what's very different between Dutch women and British women, and pardon any British descendant women here, is that the Dutch women were not just trophy wives where they were supposed to behave a certain way and be on their husband's arms. These women worked the farm, they worked the books. They were the bookkeepers. They were the ones who did the, writing down how much something was sold. They had a very active farm, and she had her children during this Revolutionary War. She was pregnant or giving birth, or having. I think she had 2 children when the war started, and then she had 3 more, and then she had even more after that. So I want you to sort of put yourself in that frame of mind. The war breaks out in this area, and it's a time that's as divided as it is in the United States right now, where people don't really want to wear their politics on their shoulders. They've got to get along. And besides, if you bet on the wrong race, you could have your land confiscated. I mean,
Which
neither side was going to be very good to
the
the
Civil War.
losers.
Mhm.
It was. And so you had to put on this air of neutrality, but because of where her farm was, she had soldiers knocking at the door. So while she had a huge farm to run, and she had Lenape Indians that she's negotiating with and trading with, they backed right up to the river. Um, they would have soldiers coming to the door from both sides demanding food. And, we see some of that
Like
playing out
being a
right now, right? I
concessionaire
can't even
during a
imagine
football game.
the
Yeah.
stress. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, there you are, you're pregnant, you've got small children running around. They would have a garden. She would have a garden right in front of her house, so that would have your root vegetables and your herbs so that you can do. She probably had help. She probably had a house help. servants. I don't know if they were slaves or not. They didn't really believe in slavery, but I do know some of the relatives did. It did have them. So this was day-to-day life for them, for Jane.
Yeah.
And did you have a question?
No,
Oh,
I have a cat attacking things.
okay, sorry. Um, So what was fascinating, and then she was sort of in the sandwich generation too. So she was the eldest of these 10 children in her parents' house. And so she would be responsible, and they were older. She would be responsible for helping them out. Um, and her husband was not well to do. So their farm was on her father's property that, was willed to them. But that's a distinction because when I was doing this work, when I finished writing the story and sent it off to you, I was, continued filling in my little blanks on ancestry and what have you, my little boxes. And I'm very confused because her daughter married somebody who had the same, and I'm going, who is this person? The daughter's mother-in-law is Jane's sister Mary. So Jane's sister Mary married a Post, and that's the name that
Yeah.
descended all the way down. Now, the Post family, also Dutch, and again, it's a very close community. They speak Dutch, they speak English, they understand to speak and horse trade with the Lenape. So these are very educated women that are mining the fort. But Mary also, but she married into the more well-to-do Post family, which had a mill and so on. The Posts were more active within the Revolutionary War on the Patriot side. So when I originally wrote this, I said that they were neutral, and I thought there was a chance that maybe they lean more patriot than loyalist. I'm more convinced of it as I've done subsequent
Right. Right.
work. So
Right.
anyway, that's my story of these
That's one
women.
that's one of the reasons that I felt so strongly in setting up Stories 250 in the first place, to be completely separate from all of these things that look at lineage to a validated patriot to blah blah blah. Somebody else is doing those stories. From my perspective, the stories not told, the stories that are really interesting, is when this was a civil war. This was an extraordinary and arguably even a world war, particularly as we see the battles that follow with France and Spain and so on, that it was upsetting and turning everything upside down. And watching to see how those were directly affecting families, to me, this is absolutely fascinating, whether you know today or what you know tomorrow and, months from now about who was on which side of what battle. That's the fact that it seems like they were neutral is part of the story.
Is part of the story, right?
Not having the complete fact is part of the story.
And
Yes.
I know you and I have spoken about this, and others on this call we've echoed it. The fact that all of the statues out there are for the men who rode off on horses, but the fact that we're standing here today is because those women were
Yeah.
able to keep their children alive, through disease and a war and soldiers banging on the door. And those soldiers probably weren't all nice. I mean, we see what happens when there's
What was the threat to women there alone when a giant group of soldiers comes? We know what that was. I
who's
mean,
starving, and they're
yeah,
starving, right? We
and they're
understand,
starving.
right? And I'm hoping she gave some rotten potatoes to some of them.
Which side we don't know, but never
No, just if they were rude. Anybody rude got rotten potatoes.
mind. By golly, we stand up for politeness. But it is fascinating to see how these kinds of structures are so found. All of this family work gives us this insight into what really was happening, even as we read about the larger pictures of story. And I don't know about you, but certainly since I began this venture, including some work today, suddenly getting a new visibility to how fluid the lines were between the loyalists and the patriots, or even within the patriots, there were the Continentals and the militiamen, and who was really, what role were they actually taking? And then as they were sliding back and forth across the lines. That's what to me was so fascinating with Jane Chapman's initial post in this series, with one ancestor who was a loyalist, a patriot, and a Spaniard. Oh, actually, not quite in that order. It was a loyalist, a Spaniard, and a patriot. Um, and you bring up, I still have vivid memories from your piece. Somehow it struck me. I don't even remember where in the piece it is, but the sense of, I can almost smell the hearth, the burning fireplace, and this cold iciness outside, and soldiers, giant. Somehow they're always giant. Soldiers pounding on the door, starving and demanding food, because that's how it's done.
Well, their
Um,
day-to-day tasks were amazing. I mean, they were forever doing laundry. I don't know how you dry them in this weather, but they had to figure that out. And to your point, getting wood, bringing it inside, and you've got these small little children. And I remember when I started this story, my husband and I were watching our 1-year-old, no, what, not even 10-month-old grandnephew. And I mean, you're exhausted. They're running how do you keep them out of the fire? As there's soldiers at the door. I just,
I think kids figure that one out.
we didn't have the baby Bjorns to put them in. I don't know what they
Yeah.
did with those to keep them out of the embers.
Actually, that's probably what those fancy little, what we think of today as little decorative hearth screens. No, they were solid. Actually, if you could afford it, they were solid metal, and, weren't gonna move. And you have
They
a lot of
probably got
children, so
hot,
they can keep,
right?
yeah, right. I mean, like I said, there's some things you learn as a kid. Don't stick your finger in outlets is, like a modern thing, but it just takes once. Not gonna do it again. Oh,
But
man.
but this was so much fun, digging into this part of the family that I didn't know anything about, and then it brought me into that whole it just brought that history of the United States with New Netherlands, the New England area, and then there was this, king involved, and so the Dutch, because of the Dutch Reformed Church, probably they they didn't like a monarch, so that's why you can sort of figure out where their loyalties would lie. But if
Yeah,
they're all active trading, they had mills, and they had an uncle had an inn. I mean, you're serving the public. And again, we see it today. I mean, if you serve the wrong side, then you're boycotted. So you
yeah,
wouldn't want to do that. So there would have to
no.
be these women had to be diplomats as well as everything else. So
Now, you hinted at another story that you're working on. Have I missed a post, or is this a story still underway?
no, happened is well, I took these I continued down the family tree and brought them to the Durkee family. So these the posts ended up having, or the two sisters ended up having uh their children, their respective children, married, and then that set off this next generation, and they married into the Durkee family, which is one that I did recently, where there was the raid in Vermont with the Indians. So I mean,
That's
we're only
early,
we're a
yeah, so that's
generation off.
early 19th century or something.
Yes, yes, that's
Right.
early 19th
Uh,
century. Oh, well,
okay.
no, 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 no. It was earlier. Well, yes, I started with the Durkee. No, it was Revolutionary War, because what happened
Yeah,
is the okay. Hey, I was trying to stay focused.
I know.
In the Durkee family, so this is another branch, but at the same time going on in Vermont, they had come back from Massachusetts, and actually they'd gone to Connecticut, to Massachusetts. They were involved in, they were Congregationalists, another religion. They moved to Vermont thinking it was part of New Hampshire. But what happened at that time is Vermont was no longer recognized as being part of, and I think they were under the French. So now there's this no man's land, and they New York was laying claim to it, and New Hampshire was laying claim to it. So you have these townspeople, and there were only maybe 20 families in this town.
That's right.
And
Yes.
the king said, "Oh, all right, it can be New York." And they thought it was New Hampshire. Anyway, there was a tremendous amount of taxation on this land. And the British went and made a deal with the several Indian tribes going from New York up to Canada and into New England to come and attack this town. These were all disgruntled Indians who felt that their land had been, traipsed upon and taken over by these ne'er-do-wells. And so they instigated this raid on this town, which caused, and again, I was focusing on the women. So there's this raid at the early morning, and this was in the late fall. And that early morning raid, uh, they were setting the entire town on fire. And they weren't interested in women and babies, but the Indians were interested in kidnapping children that they could then make as soldiers. They would adopt them and make them soldiers. Any men would be conscripted by the British, taken back to Montreal as prisoners of war. And so this other relative, Anna Durkee, she had, I'm forgetting how many kids she had at that point. I think she had 7 or 8 children. She had a young baby, and she had a 14-year-old daughter who was with her. Her boys were not there. Some, I think, were married or they were on other parts of the land. And the raid came in, and it's likely, I don't know for fact what she did, but I know from firsthand accounts from other people that the women were running into the woods. And so, you had like a nanosecond to
Yeah.
figure out what you were gonna take. And
Yeah.
again, you've got a baby and a 14-year-old, and you're running off into the woods. Did you bring a tin cup so you could grab water? And these people knew how to survive in the wilderness. So did they bring a mending kit that would have something like, to with bandages or some sort of tincture of some sort in case they were scraped? So these people were rolling over the side of hedges and then making their way up into
And
the
keep
woods. And it snowed overnight. And they were there for 24 hours while the whole town was burned. Now, two of her children, 3 of her sons were taken by the Indians. One was taken to Montreal as a prisoner of war, but another local woman negotiated with them to release the children. So she was reunited with 2 of her sons, but the third son, who was 19, he ended up dying up in prison. So really interesting, um, looking at it from those two perspectives.
yeah. And these women were descendants, daughters, elder daughters who married of Ryerson that you're talking about here
The
in New Jersey.
and the Ryerson, daughter married a Tucker who came from this Durkee
I
lineage.
see.
So,
I
yeah,
see.
so
Yeah.
that's how they intertwine. So, yeah, it was really, I enjoyed this project so much.
I don't think they did.
No, but I'll
Keep
tell you.
make that a reminder. Our suffering will create great enjoyment for our descendants.
All right, maybe that was the wrong
Ouch.
word, but
No, no, no. But in all seriousness, the suffering that we go through, the struggles that we go through in the grand arc of history creates if we capture the stories, if we capture the context, and we make it possible for the connections to be visible to those generations from now, even if we don't actually have the time, resources, or capacity to write the story, become something that gives strength, resilience, and confidence to future
Yeah, and
generations.
for me, writing about them has made it really easy to put context with what we're going through today and be able to say, "Hey, this is not good, but this is how they survived it." And
Yeah.
it was resilience. And, they didn't stick their head in the sand either. I mean, whatever they were doing to survive, that's the reason why we're here today. So
Yeah, may have been
we're
hiding in
I
bushes.
guess we're their statues. We're their statues.
Wow. Yeah. There's a thought. There's a deep thought. And, maybe that's a great place to end it, to think of ourselves as their descendants, as the statues celebrating who they were and what they went through. And in many ways, wow. Yeah, we have a responsibility. Get that little marquee written.
Keep the fires
Thank you.
burning, right?
Exactly. Keep the fires burning. Thank you so very much. I really
Thank you for
appreciate it,
thank
Diane,
you
for
for doing
taking the
this. This was
time
great.
to do these on all these different programs that we use for Projectkin to talk about stories. It is at the end of the day what we're all about. And I think as families here doing our own research, but comparing notes and learning from each other, it's inspiring every day. And that includes all of you joining in here live. I truly appreciate the time you've taken on what is apparently here in the US a very big football day. And I know all of you watching will watch with knowledge of what happened in the football games, which is lovely. And I look forward to your comments and discussions in the notes here and in comments and discussions from Diane's posts. Now, as you know, I circulate these videos just as quickly as they're available from Substack, but I also take them aside for a moment to add in the context of, for example, the two posts that you talked about, because I think it's really important to understand that larger picture of what these two talking heads were talking about and where we take it forward. So next week is a holiday here in US on the Monday in celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. So we still move forward on our global schedule, and I have as my very special guest next Sunday, Kathy Stone, who will join us for a preview of what's coming in Kathy's Corner as she's all charged up, as you may have seen on a recent post, to talk about new quests. So there is more to come as we all try to stay focused and get those stories told, but learn as much as we can from each other. Thank you again. Talk
Thanks
to you
so much.
soon. All right,
Bye-bye.
take care
Bye,
now. Bye
everyone.
bye. Enjoy your day.